Previously on the Nicholas Payne Retro YouTube channel Doctor Who Reviews. This is a cracking story. Well, I was right. This is indeed a cracking story. Hello ladies and gentlemen, Nick here and welcome to my review of Doctor Who Spearhead From Space. The first story to feature Jon Pertwee as the first Doctor, and also the first story to feature Caroline John as Liz Shaw, and also the first story to introduce the Nestine Consciousness and the Autons, who would later become reoccurring villains again in the Jon Pertwee era, and then again in Christopher Eccleston's era, and briefly appearing in Matt Smith's era. I'd like another story of them at some point. Chris, get onto it. So Spearhead From Space, actually, I originally did this review earlier in the day, about 7.5 hours ago, but the footage, like with Space Pirates, The Dark Knight Rises and The Dark Knight Trilogy ranking, it was a bit blurry, and my mum was doing some vacuuming outside, so that wasn't very good, and I did lots of mistakes. I'll probably do some more here. And I was umming and ahhing on what score to give the story towards the end, of whether it should be a 9 or a 10. And I think the only reason is that it's a bit slow to start with. It's not boring by any stretch of the imagination. It's a slow-paced start, but it's not boring. I did, when I watched it for the second time in 2013, fun story here, I watched it after the Doctor's Revisited documentary on Jon Pertwee, the third Doctor, on Watch, or W, as it is now. Might even have been W back then, when they were showing them in the lead up to the 50th anniversary in the UK. In America they did them monthly, leading up. In the UK they did them two a week, apart from the last one when it was just 11, in a few weeks leading up to the anniversary, with 11's being the week before. So, when I saw this, I saw it already. I've had the DVD, the special edition DVD, that is. Trying to get the original one at some point. I've got the Blu-ray. But when I watched it for the second time on W, I just wasn't... I was bored with it. I was, admittedly, I was very tired for some reason. Really tired eyes. Must have not had very good sleep. Or gone to bed very late, or got up very early. But either way, it's just very tired, and I was a bit bored, and eyes were hurting. But subsequent viewings, including that of the Blu-ray copy, it's always been a really good and really fun story. And I do find it a brilliant story. I would even put it just above the War Games. And you know how positive I was on that story. But I think production-wise it is pretty much near perfect. It's just that I think it was just a bit slow to start with the first 3 episodes, especially the first 2. It was just a slow start. It was never boring, it was never dull, but it was just taking its time. And admittedly, stories do work effectively doing this, and this was effectively. It was just a little bit slow. Certainly with part 1, that was a pretty slow story, but not sluggish, just taking its time. And then, strangely enough, episode 4 picks up the pace quite quickly. Not rapidly, it doesn't rush the story's ending. It's actually done fairly well paced throughout the story, but it's just felt a little odd to me. It's not like the Space Pirates. It didn't drag, and it's not like some of the Series 7 finales where it was a quick or terrible ending. Just quick ending, like Hyde, where the TARDIS has barely any time to... Well, it couldn't land anyway in that story, but barely had... the story just ended when it appeared in the universe again. Basically, I mean, it couldn't land, but it didn't really finish the story either. So, never mind. But yeah, it was nothing. The first 3 parts never felt sluggish like Space Pirates or Ice Warriors or something, and the ending was not rushed like most of those Series 7 finales, especially in the second half. It's well paced. It's really well done. I just wished it was. I think the pace should have picked up a little bit sooner. I think part 3 does try to do it, but ultimately part 4 is the one that has the most interesting stuff, especially that autumn scene in the streets. That is so iconic. That is so cool. Worth the wait, by the way. I mean, the story is it's an amazing story and it's really great. It's just that it just feels a little slow, that's all. It's not terribly slow and it works at the pace, but I think it could have sped up a little bit, maybe in part 3, when more of the stuff is happening. But that's just how I feel, basically. I think, and I'm going to repeat something I mentioned in my earlier review from this morning. I think it should have been a 5-parter, actually. I think it should have been an extra episode long, because it had quite a bit of a slow first 2 episodes, a bit more pacey third one, and then a bit more faster paced, more interesting stuff happening in part 4, but nothing too sluggish and nothing too rushed. But I think the story could have had another episode. Maybe it would have. I think the fight is a bit too short as well with the Autons. I think there could have been a bit more from the confrontation, and I think we could have a bit more of that guy with the who went back to his office and then later found the Autons and then went to unit and then was killed in part 3. I think we could have had a bit more time with him. I think we could have had a bit more time with Channing. I think we could have tried to find out a bit more about the plot. I mean, it's a simple plot. The Nestines want to colonise the planet, but I think we could have found out a little bit more about him. And I think one thing I want to know is why Channing tried to kidnap the Doctor. Did he think he was an alien? Alien presence? If so, is that the reason? And how he doesn't recognise him when he's in the Madame Tussauds. And maybe we could have a bit more Madame Tussauds stuff. That was actually a pretty good scene. That was a really good scene. But yeah, I think maybe the episode could have benefited from a 5th episode. Maybe it might have been even slower. To be honest, I think it could have been. But you know what? I think 4 parts does work. But I'm wondering if 5 parts would have made it even better. I'm just wondering. Normally, I'm actually asking for stories to be shorter. Quite a few times. Like later in the season, we're going to have 3 7-parters. At least one of those could have become 6 and let this one be 5. Or just notch down to 5 or 6 episodes, just so it doesn't. Like the Dominators was going to be 6, and the production team felt it didn't need to be 6, so they knocked it down to 5. So you could have something like that. So you didn't have to have 7 parts for all 3 stories. You could have the final story at the end or in the middle. That would have been 2 or 3 episodes long. Something nice and quick. They sort it out for next season with a more range of 4 and 6 part stories and a 5-parter, and then afterwards 4s and 6s, with one season having a 2 in there for the remainder of the Pertwee and the Baker eras. That 2-parter being, of course, Sontaran Experiment. But despite those nitpicks, I would say nitpicks with the pacing and the how I feel about it, and also wondering whether a 5th part would have benefited the story or not, or if it would have made it less interesting, less entertaining. But you never know. Performance-wise, Jon Pertwee, like Patrick Troughton, from the get-go, he is perfect as the 3rd Doctor. I think Patrick Troughton was pitch point from the first minute. I think Jon Pertwee, it does take him until once he's recovered from his little nap, although he does do a great performance whilst in his kind of post-regeneration state. But after his rest, he's a bit better and he gets right into action, and he's really great when he does. With Hartnell, I think it took him a few more till Marco Polo Keys and Marinus to find his feet with the character, whilst Pertwee, it takes him about 2 or 3 episodes, and Troughton, it was pretty much an episode, or another episode or 2, 1 or 2 episodes. But I think, yeah, definitely Pertwee and Troughton have been, since day 1 or just a few episodes in, they've been pitch perfect as their Doctors, and it really shows throughout the remainder of the story how perfect Pertwee is. And yeah, I think they had a fantastic choice for the 3rd Doctor. Caroline John is also brilliant as Liz Shaw, and she's also really great. For starters, we see her a bit more of a sceptical character, but then later on she becomes a bit more of an... helps out a lot more and has more involvement with the plot, and I think she does really good. I do want to point something else here that I was supposed to bring up earlier, but in the review I did earlier on, but I didn't. There was I noticed some voice dubbings, or at least what I presume to be voice dubbings, over Liz and maybe a couple of other characters. And with Liz, the sound didn't seem to line up with her mouth movements. With the Brigadier, it kind of did, but with Liz, it wasn't so much. So I'm not sure. Did they have to dub some of those bits, or was that just some editing that went a little bit awry, or am I just seeing editing tricks being muddled because I'm so used to it? I watch a lot of Bond films, and quite a lot of the earlier Bond films feature dubbings, and they don't always match with their lines. In fact, later this week I'm going to be watching Live and Let Die. It's one of the best ones. But yeah, because I've seen quite a lot of awkward dubbing on the earlier Bond films, and I know that's a thing with earlier films in general, as they're animated, but even then sometimes. But whenever there's redubbing, it can be a bit awkward. And with Doctor Who, I don't really found that case, because it's usually been filmed with a set cameras. However, this is the one story that due to some studio strikes, I believe it was. Industrial action by certain elements of the BBC staff at the time. It was filmed all on location with a 16mm camera for footage. Film. That's it, 16mm film, and therefore that's why it became the only story before the reanimated stories and the movie to be released on Blu-ray in 2013. It was the only classic Doctor Who story. 2013, I did say, yeah. Only classic Doctor Who story to be released on Blu-ray at the time. In fact, the 2005 to 2008 episodes had only just been restored for a series 1 to 7 Blu-ray box set, and then they would get their own individual releases the following year. Next Doctor, I'm sure, was included on the specials box set a few years before, and Australia had its own Blu-ray release as well. Australia, New Zealand, Region 4 / BCD? C, I think. So, yeah. But since 2013, we've had a few more classic stories on Blu-ray. The movie's got one, and all the completely or partially animated stories since from Power the Daleks onwards, with Power, Shada, and the upcoming The Macra Terror. Plus, of course, the new complete collection Blu-ray box set. At the time of recording, season 18 has just got its released, and 12 and 19 have also been released. Nicholas Courtney is back as the Brigadier, and he's really great as well. Once again, he's now a regular character. This is his first story as a regular character, as he previously appeared as a guest character in the previous 2 stories he was in. And it's also great to see a little less people at units, and see him more of an in charge, and him having 1 or 2 other next in command ones. We'll see a regular second and third in commands later on down the line, with the return of Sergeant Benton and the introducement of Captain Yates. But for now, it's great just seeing the Brigadier, and also Captain Munro is also a very good character as well, his second in command in this story. And Channing, I think he's an effective villain as well. I think the actor gets a balance between not because he's an Auton, but the actor brings a bit more of a human side to the character, which makes us guess he is human, or at least with humanoid emotions and ideas before the revealment of he was an Auton, and a very up-to-date one as well. A very well one. Spit and polish, I was going to say, but it's really well done Auton, and the ones in the streets even more so, also really great ones, considering the ones that was connecting the cuboids were just standard drone bots, but once the NEST team takes control over the shop window dummies of the country to start with, then those are a bit more of an advanced type of Auton. But anyway, so Spearhead From Space, it's really great, it's really enjoyable, has lots of great stuff. From a production point, it's pretty much near perfect. I mean, subjectively, I didn't love it as much as I would a normal 10 out of 10, but it's just works to those levels, so you know what, I'm going to give Spearhead From Space a 10 out of 10. More out of objectiveness than subjectiveness, and usually my reviews are subjective rather than objective, but this time round I think I have to go with the 10 out of 10, even though I think more it should be a 9 personally, but I think objectively it would get a 10, and War Games I think did come pretty close, but I think that one's definitely a 9, but this one I think just about gets the 10 from me, more out of objectiveness than subjectiveness. But you know what, some scores have gone down after thinking about it a bit more. Maybe this one can go up a little bit after thinking about it a bit more, or maybe it'll go back down to a 9 by the ranking, but for right now it's 10 out of 10 just. Alright, so that's Spearhead From Space. Definitely perfect on on a production level. Anyway, next time I'll be looking at the first Doctor Who story that I got on DVD, Doctor Who and the Silurians. Well, I say the first one of, it was in a box set with two other stories, the Sea Devils and Warriors of the Deep, but considering this is the first of the 3, then I suppose this could be considered the number 1, the very first. But yeah, those were my first 3 Doctor Who, classic Doctor Who stories on DVD, and the first ones I watched on DVD. This one certainly was number 1. I have seen some classic Doctor Who stories beforehand, but these were the first ones I saw on DVD, and also it's the only Doctor Who story to be called Doctor Who and the insert title here. They did a lot of it. I think almost all the Target novels were called Doctor Who and the insert title here. For example, this one was Doctor Who and the Cave Monsters. The film Doctor Who and the Daleks that had it, but this is the only official story in the show. Oh, and the Savage at the end of the Gunfighters Part 4, it had next week Doctor Who and the Savages, but then the next week it was just the Savages, as opposed to Doctor Who and the Savages. But here it is Doctor Who and the Silurians, and that is the one and only time in the official show that it is Doctor Who and the insert title here for a story, and in this case, Silurians. So, thank you for watching my review of Spearhead From Space, and I'll see you guys next time for my review of Doctor Who and the Silurians. I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye. Don't forget to click below to subscribe to the official Nicholas Payne Retro YouTube channel. Hello ladies and gentlemen, Nick here, and welcome to my review. Oh, hang on, I was supposed to do the starting bit as well. Keep doing this. Previously on the Nicholas Payne Retro channel... Previously on the Nicholas Payne Retro YouTube channel, Doctor Who reviews. Well, I was right. This is indeed a cracking story. Even though I'm sure, I was positive I wouldn't give it a 10. I know lots of people would. And this is a very popular story like War Games. But I personally, I don't think it's quite 10 out of 10. Just subjectively. I think objectively it comes very close to it. But subjectively, not quite. And on my ranking list prior to rewatching this story for the review, it had been up at 9. And, yeah, it's still a really great and really enjoyable story. But I'm not going to give it a 10. I think I'll stick with my 9 score, and I'll confirm this at the end. But I don't love this as much as everybody else. But in fact, the 2005 to 2008 episodes where it'd only just been... Fuck. I just don't feel that it should be a 10, at least from me. I think I know a lot of people would give it a 10, but I just don't personally think it is. I don't know what it is. It's just some sort of subconscious thing. Yeah, it's just it's odd. It's odd subconscious thing. I don't want to and ah about it again, but you know what? I'm going to settle on that 10 out of 10 score, actually, to be honest. I wouldn't say perfect, but it was definitely great.